So today we are talking about Ethereum, and Ethereum is the second version of blockchain that came out, the first being Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was the fundamental blockchain that began in 2008, and its use case is as a store of value. Its whole purpose is to be digital gold, and it has a capped supply. So there will only ever be so many Bitcoin, whereas Ethereum is focused on utility. Ethereum, you can understand it as the first like operating system for blockchain. You can think about it kind of like how IBM was for the computer, right? IBM made the first operating systems, the first personal computers. In a similar way, Ethereum was the first blockchain made for dApps, decentralized applications. And so the majority of current blockchain projects, whether that's NFT trading, metaverse projects, video games, things like Decentraland, and we'll look at some more specific examples of projects that use Ethereum later. Most of them are built and developed on Ethereum. And you can actually issue your own tokens as a side chain. That's what they're called, is a side chain of Ethereum. So for example, Mana, which is a token for Decentraland, is built using a side chain on Ethereum. And a lot of people have been criticizing Ethereum recently, but they're in the process of updating, and they've already made some major updates. So I would still say that there's a serious chance that Ethereum will continue to be a major operating system, quote unquote, for blockchain into the years to come. So, as I mentioned earlier, Ethereum is a second generation blockchain, but we are currently on the third generation. And all of these third generation blockchains, such as Solana or ADA, I think that's not actually the name. Cardano is the name of the blockchain. ADA is the name of the token they use. That those blockchains are all trying to be the ETH killer. They're trying to replace Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is actually quite old. It went online in 2015. Whereas many of these more recent blockchains have only come online as of last year in the case of Cardano. So one thing to keep in mind as well is that ETH or Ether is the name of the crypto. Ethereum is the name of the blockchain. Okay, so just something to keep in mind in the future. Ethereum is the blockchain, Ether or ETH is the cryptocurrency. And it is the creation of Vitalik Buterin. And so to this day, he is extremely influential in the crypto community. And he's very famous for the blockchain trilemma, which he also had a hard time struggling with when he was designing the Ethereum blockchain. Now, what the blockchain trilemma is a trade-off that people need to make between decentralization, security, and scalability or speed. It's very hard to make something that is both decentralized and fast, or decentralized, fast, and secure. That the speed and decentralization problem, I think, are actually the two most important. I mean, like, yes, security is definitely important and you don't want people's information to be stolen. But I think when it comes for, the mind of most developers, the real hard trade-off is whether to pick either security and scalability or decentralization and scalability. So moving on, So right now, Ethereum is still based on a proof of work model. What that means is that people get their computers to solve extremely complex math equations, which are necessary to do transactions on the Ethereum network. So the type of things too that are considered to be transactions are not necessarily anything to do with money. If you are in a blockchain game, for example, if you press W to walk forward, or if you start to chat, these things are also considered to be transactions. So that is a really big problem, considering that, and I'd like to highlight this at the bottom here, this bottom point, that Ethereum can only complete 40 transactions in a second. Whereas third generation blockchains, such as Solana and EOS, can do 5,000 and 4,000 transactions per second, respectively. One thing to keep in mind about Solana that it's received a lot of flack for is that it is not decentralized. The majority of the Solana tokens, and thus the majority of voting rights, because it's like shares, right, in a company, are held by a select group of individuals, right? Whereas other projects, for example, Cardano, are extremely decentralized. The majority of ADA tokens are held by retail investors. So this is something to keep in mind. Ethereum is considered to be a relatively decentralized blockchain. So that, in the eyes of a lot of investors, is actually a green flag. It's a good thing, because even though updates and voting and all these things take a long time, you don't need to worry about there ever being a rug pull, or about, you know, maybe things not moving in a very democratic direction. So what's happening is that proof of work is holding Ethereum back right now. It has so many competitors that are able to move so much faster, and it's designed to be more and more expensive. If we look back at the previous slide, or did I mention it on this slide? Perhaps not. Maybe it's on the next. Yes. So they've already began their process of renewal with the London hard fork. But what happened in the London hard fork is that it's made a change in the transactions. So every time you do a transaction, any transaction on Ethereum, a small part of Ethereum is destroyed every time permanently. And as a result, they're trying to make Ethereum, or rather Ether, I should say, the actual asset, the token, Ether, an appreciating asset with or without greater interest from investors. And the way they're doing that is by limiting supply. It's not limited in the same way that Bitcoin is limited. Bitcoin is capped, right? There will only ever be so many Bitcoin. Ethereum, you can produce however much Ethereum you want, but you're also at the same time destroying Ethereum permanent, like Ether, every time that you do a transaction. Jack, we're going to take questions at the end. Okay, we're getting there in just a moment, but that's something to keep in mind. If you're going to build on Ethereum, you have to be ready for the fact that the fees are really high, and they're not planning on making the fees any lower. So that's a really big deal. So to recap, Ethereum is the most widely used blockchain. It is slow because of its proof of stake model, and it is increasingly expensive. But they have an extremely competent team, and they have already started to make major changes to the blockchain. In fact, you can already start staking Ethereum 2.0 now. You just need to invest and buy 20 ETH, which is kind of crazy considering that one ETH is between like 4,000 and 5,000 US. So anyways, but you can start to get involved in that transition if you want to, if you really believe in it. So that's what the Ethereum blockchain is. from a kind of business person's perspective. And these are some major applications that are already using Ethereum. We can talk a bit about these. We can also take your questions now if you have any questions. Jack, go.